There are moments in life when the truth doesn't knock politely at the door. It kicks it wide open. Secrets don't stay secrets forever. No matter how carefully they're buried, no matter how many layers of silence are wrapped around them, truth has a way of rising to the surface, sharp and undeniable, like sunlight breaking through storm clouds. For years they thought they had you figured out. They labeled you, boxed you, dismissed you. They spoke as though your destiny could be contained in a sentence, as though your worth could be erased with a rumor. They built stories about you, stories that suited their comfort, stories that made them look taller by keeping you small. And for a time, maybe the world believed them, but here's the part they never saw coming. Silence is not emptiness. Stillness is not defeat. What they mistook for weakness was preparation. What they mistook for absence was alignment. All the while, beneath the surface, something was building, something they couldn't measure, couldn't control, couldn't destroy, and then, suddenly, it happened. The reveal, the slip, the moment when the truth they tried to bury became too heavy to contain. Now everyone knows. The secret is out. The light has broken through, and the world is staring straight at what they tried to hide. You. Not the version of you they invented, not the caricature they painted. The real you, the chosen one, the architect, the blueprint carrier, the one who endured the silence, survived the ridicule, and rose anyway. And the irony. In their desperate attempt to bury you, they became the very proof of your significance. Every rumor, every smear, every attempt to erase you is now evidence of how much you mattered. They wrote themselves into the story without realizing they were exposing their own fear. This is not just about being seen. It's about exposure. It's about the collapse of illusions, the breaking of false identities, the unveiling of a design that was always there. What they thought was hidden has become a spectacle. What they mocked has become undeniable. What they tried to silence has become the loudest sound in the room. So listen closely. Watch carefully, because this is not the story they told you. This is the story they tried to bury, the one that refuses to stay quiet, the one that proves beyond any shadow of doubt that you were never ordinary, never forgotten, never erased. You were chosen. And now, everybody knows. 1. Revelation of the Chosen One. Imagine walking through life with a cloak draped over you, one that others stitched together out of their assumptions, their labels, their judgments. They wrapped it tight, convinced it would hide who you really are. They whispered, "Keep them small, keep them ordinary, keep them unseen." And for a while, it looked like their plan had worked. You blended into the background. They thought they had you boxed in, filed away under just another face in the crowd. But there's something about truth. It doesn't stay buried forever. Like light seeping through the cracks of a locked door, it finds a way to shine. And now that light has burst through in a way no one can ignore. The secret is out. The disguise no longer fits. The world knows. You've been the chosen one all along. People around you feel it before they fully understand it. They see the shift in the air when you walk in. They sense the gravity you carry, even if they can't explain why. It unsettles some, inspires others, but either way, it cannot be denied. They tried to mute your essence, but instead, every attempt only made it louder. Think about it. How many times were you underestimated? How many times did they laugh, dismiss, or even pity you? And yet, every slight, every dismissal was fuel. They didn't realize that by trying to bury you, they were planting a seed. And now that seed has broken through the soil, rising tall, visible to everyone. There's a kind of irony in their efforts. They thought keeping you hidden would protect their own comfort, their own illusions. But in doing so, they sharpened you, they pressed you, tested you, and without knowing it, polished you like a diamond. Now you're shining in plain sight, and their biggest fear has come true. Everybody sees you, and not just sees you, remembers you. Studies in psychology prove that people hold on to what resonates with truth far longer than they hold on to lies. Their fabrications fade like smoke, but your reality has carved itself into history. The world can't unknow what it now knows. You are not ordinary. You never were. Picture it, a hidden treasure locked away, ignored, forgotten. Then one day, a shaft of light breaks open the chest, and suddenly the brilliance spills out. That brilliance is you, uncovered, undeniable. They can no longer pretend you are invisible, because your very existence commands recognition. This is where everything shifts. What was once concealed has been revealed. What was dismissed has now become undeniable. You are standing in the open, and the world is finally seeing what you carried all along. 2. The power of silence. Silence is not absence. It is not weakness. It is not emptiness. Silence is a fortress. For a long time, that fortress protected the ones who stood against you. They believed your quiet was submission, that your stillness meant defeat. They built their entire identity on the illusion that you would never speak, never rise, never reveal. Think about how silence works in a room. A pause after a sentence, a long hesitation before a reply. People lean in, anxious to fill the void, to interpret what isn't said. Silence holds weight because it forces others to project onto it. That's what they did with you. They filled the space you left with their own story. They cast themselves as heroes, martyrs, leaders, even saints. And because you remained quiet, their performance looked convincing. But silence doesn't last forever. It's like pressure building beneath the earth. At first, the ground looks still, steady, harmless, and then, without warning, the eruption comes. Your voice, your presence, your truth, breaking open with more force than anything they could control. The very silence they trusted turned into evidence against them. Here's the paradox. Silence is powerful because it conceals, but it's devastating once it breaks. They thought muting you was safety, but that safety was a countdown clock. Every attempt to smother you made the eventual explosion louder, brighter, undeniable. Why else did they fight so hard to keep you quiet? Why else the rumors, the distractions, the sabotage? They weren't protecting themselves from noise. They were terrified of clarity. They knew that once your voice slipped into the open, it would dismantle the scaffolding of lies they had built. And now look, what they feared has arrived. The silence is gone. The fortress has collapsed. Their camouflage no longer works, because the world is watching with fresh eyes. The quiet you once carried has become an indictment against them. Every second you stayed silent now reads like patience, not weakness, like restraint, not defeat. Think about it. When someone invests so much energy to suppress another person, what does that say about their fear? They weren't just afraid of your words, they were afraid of what those words would reveal, afraid of how effortlessly truth outlives fiction, afraid that the stage they built for themselves would dissolve the moment you stepped into the light. Silence gave them a temporary mask. Breaking silence tore it away. Now, every whispered rumor, every narrative they crafted dissolves in the presence of what actually is. And the irony? It was never really your voice that ruined them, it was their dependence on your silence. The silence they relied on has betrayed them. What once shielded them now exposes them. The power they clung to has slipped through their hands, leaving them vulnerable, visible, and undone. 3. False identities and illusions. Exposed, they wore masks like accessories, not to protect themselves, but to perform. You saw them playing roles, the wounded martyr who never bled, the fearless leader who never led, the sanctified voice who never acted. When someone's identity depends on a performance, every audience member becomes an accomplice, and for a long time, they depended on you to stay in the dark so their play could go on. Look at how they moved. Strategic smiles, rehearsed indignation, dramatic pauses. They built a stage of shadows and puppet strings, and they pulled those strings with one hand while pointing fingers with the other. The trick is always the same. Confuse the crowd long enough that their role looks real. The more elaborate the costume, the easier it is for an audience to forget they're watching theater. But here's the uncomfortable truth for them. A role depends on silence. It needs an audience that won't question, witnesses who will accept the script without rehearsal. So they practiced their parts in private, perfected excuses, polished contradictions until the mirror reflected only what they wanted the world to see. They relied on routine, small lies, repeated often until repetition hardened into fact. Now the mirror is shattered. Every mask that looked secure is flaking at the edges. When someone's identity is borrowed, built from gossip, misdirection, and borrowed confidence, it falters the moment reality steps on stage. The real moments, the unscripted ones, expose the hollow core. The leader who never made hard calls, the hero who never took the fall, the saint whose kindness had an expiration date. All of it cracks when the lights go full and people start to look closer. And people are looking. Once you stop being an accessory in their drama and become the subject of your own story, other people's performances become obvious. Neighbors, colleagues, online strangers. They begin to notice the mismatch between what was claimed and what actually happened. Little inconsistencies pile up like unpaid bills. A timeline that doesn't add up, a promise never fulfilled, evidence of plagiarism or mimicry. Each discrepancy is a nail in the false identity's coffin. Worse for them, imitation never equals origin. They stole gestures, copied routines, borrowed phrases that tasted like your voice. But they didn't inherit your conviction. That's the difference between a counterfeit and a currency. One can be printed with effort, the other is stamped by authenticity. Their mimicry looked good at distance, but authenticity reads at the micro level. In the way you remained steady under pressure, in the quiet choices nobody filmed, in the sacrifices no one applauded. And when imitation collapses, humiliation is public. The applause dries up, and the applause track is revealed to be a loop. People who once cheered begin to rewind their own memories and realize they had been coached into applause. The image that seemed permanent becomes laughably fragile, and the architects of the lie scramble to rewrite the script. This is the moment when the facade doesn't just fall, it becomes instructive. Others learn to watch not only the performance, but the person. They learn to value evidence over spectacle, consistency over presentation. Truth doesn't always arrive with fireworks. Sometimes it shows up in a pattern, a history, a series of small, undeniable acts. And as the masks peel away, you understand something crucial. The humiliation isn't yours to carry. It belongs to those who built a life on pretense, who counted on silence to sustain their fiction. Their applause was borrowed, their stage rented. The reveal strips it all back down to raw material. 4. Your design and blueprint. Nothing about you was accidental. Every decision, every sacrifice, every sleepless night was a brick laid in silence, part of a structure no one else could see. They mocked you because the foundation looked empty, unfinished, insignificant. They didn't realize that blueprints always look like chaos to those who cannot read them. You were designing while they were dismissing. You were mapping out corridors and staircases while they were laughing at the empty lot. They didn't know that real architecture begins underground, in places invisible to the casual observer. The groundwork has to be deep, steady, hidden, before the visible structure can rise. And that's what you were doing all along, excavating, anchoring, preparing. Every failure was actually a measurement. Every delay was another line drawn across the blueprint. Every sacrifice was a cornerstone. To outsiders, it looked like waste. To you, it was progress. What they called stagnation was actually precision. You weren't stumbling, you were aligning. The irony is that while they ridiculed you, they were benefiting from the very structure you were creating. They took fragments of your vision, little sparks of your originality, and tried to pass them off as their own. They mimicked your resilience, copied your phrases, borrowed your discipline. But what they couldn't copy was the foundation. Because the foundation wasn't visible. It wasn't a slogan or a performance. It was buried in the depth of your preparation, and now the structure is rising. The skeleton of your design is visible, towering, undeniable. People look up and realize this didn't appear overnight. It was there all along, hidden in plain sight, too vast for them to measure until the frame emerged. Think of how buildings work. At first, there's nothing but a pit, wires, mud. It looks like destruction. People walk by and wonder if anything valuable will come from it. Then, slowly, beams rise, glass shines, the skyline shifts. What was mocked as emptiness becomes a monument. That is your life. That is your path. You designed with intent. You didn't just endure, you calculated. Every rejection redirected you toward alignment. Every betrayal stripped away what couldn't remain. Every moment they thought was wasted was another quiet line traced on the master plan. And this is why their imitation failed. They copied the look of the beams, but not the strength of the foundation. They tried to reconstruct the shape without ever holding the blueprint, and without a blueprint, all imitation collapses eventually. Now the blueprint is visible in the results, in your clarity, in the way people now connect the dots backward and realize nothing was random. The long nights, the patience, the sacrifices, the steady silence, it was all part of the architecture. The blueprint was never meant for them to understand. It was yours, drawn by your hands, guided by something greater, executed with precision. What they thought was emptiness has revealed itself as design, and the design is undeniable. 5. The irony. Isn't it funny how the loudest voices always claim certainty, right before reality proves them wrong? They had the speeches prepared, the smirks rehearsed, the mocking laughter ready to echo in every room. "Look at them," they said. "What a waste, what a joke." And yet, here we are, watching their own script backfire in their hands. Irony has a way of turning silence into applause. While they thought you were stumbling, you were gathering strength. While they believed they had cornered you, they were actually cornering themselves. And now the punchline has landed, but it isn't you who looks foolish. It's them. Think about it. They spent years telling anyone who would listen that you didn't matter, that you were irrelevant. They poured energy into dismissing you, ridiculing you, even erasing you. If you truly didn't matter, why invest so much? Why dedicate entire chapters of their lives to proving your insignificance? The very effort betrays the truth. You don't build an army to fight a shadow. You only fight what threatens you. The comedy is in their contradictions. They called you weak, yet their lives revolved around keeping you down. They painted you as irrelevant, yet their every move revealed how relevant you actually were. Their lies were supposed to bury you, but those lies became billboards announcing your importance. They accidentally advertised what they tried to hide. And here's where it gets even sweeter. Their sabotage became your spotlight. Every rumor spread, every smear campaign, every attempt to discredit, all of it ended up pointing back to you. They thought they were throwing dirt on your name, but instead they were planting seeds. Seeds that grew into undeniable proof. Now people see the gap. The narrative they spun doesn't match reality. They said you were broken, yet you're standing. They said you were irrelevant, yet the evidence of your work is everywhere. They said you were lost, yet you keep showing up stronger. The audience notices. The cracks in their performance are too wide to ignore. And what do they have left? Excuses. More excuses. But excuses don't erase evidence. Their stories can't stand against the clarity of what people now witness with their own eyes. Irony, once again, steals the stage. The very mouths that tried to discredit you have discredited themselves. It's poetic, really. The harder they tried to erase you, the bolder your presence became. The more they insisted you had no purpose, the clearer your purpose appeared. They laughed at the blueprint, mocked the foundation, and now stare at the towering structure, unable to explain how it got there. The irony is heavy, undeniable, merciless. They built their reputation on your silence, and now your very existence has exposed their fraud. They wrote the script of your downfall, but the twist ending? It's their masks that fell, their credibility that burned, their lies that became comedy. 7. Outcome. What happens when lies collapse? Not with a whisper, not with a quiet fade, but with a thunder that echoes across every corner of memory. The outcome is not silence. It is revelation. You stand, not as the broken image they painted, but as the living contradiction to every falsehood. The weight of their narratives dissolves, crumbling like sand between fingers. The outcome is not their triumph, it is their exposure, their undoing, their realization that the stage they built was never theirs to keep. Picture the moment. The lights are still on, the curtain still drawn, but the actors can no longer remember their lines. The audience shifts uncomfortably because the illusion is gone. Masks lie scattered on the floor, costumes torn, the play unraveling in real time. That is what happens when truth takes its place center stage. Performance falters, and authenticity reigns without needing to announce itself. The outcome is recognition. Not the shallow recognition of applause or headlines, but the deeper kind. The recognition etched into history, into memory, into the collective awareness of those who can no longer deny what they have seen. People remember strength. They remember resilience. They remember what could not be erased. And in that recognition, there is a shift. The ones who mocked now stumble over their own contradictions. The ones who denied now scramble for explanations. The ones who dismissed now find themselves confronted by the evidence of what they refused to see. Their downfall is not dramatic fire. It is the slow humiliation of being revealed as fragile, dishonest, hollow. Meanwhile, your presence expands. Not because you forced it, not because you demanded it, but because truth has a gravity of its own. It pulls eyes, it commands attention, it anchors itself where deception once floated. This gravity cannot be undone. The outcome is inevitability, the world finally orbiting what was always at the center. Every false story becomes a lesson. Every attempt to bury you becomes proof of how impossible it was to erase you. Every whispered rumor now echoes back as testimony of their fear, their desperation, their inability to contain what was destined to rise. The outcome is a reversal. Everything they meant for erasure transformed into evidence of your endurance. And what of you? You do not gloat. You do not need to. The outcome itself speaks louder than any victory speech. It is written in the eyes of those who finally see, in the silence of those who cannot deny, in the collapse of the roles that once stood tall. This is not an ending. It is exposure living on, truth breathing without resistance, authenticity taking root where fiction once stood. The outcome is not final, it is alive, echoing, expanding, reshaping everything it touches. The story has unfolded piece by piece, the silence shattered, the masks removed, the blueprint revealed, the lies exposed. And now, all that remains is the undeniable truth standing in the center of it all. You were always the one, not by accident, not by coincidence, but by design. Look at the aftermath. The stage is empty, the applause is gone. The actors who played their roles so confidently are left scrambling for lines that no longer exist. Their costumes hang limp, their stories dissolved into dust. What they thought was eternal has collapsed overnight, and the weight of exposure leaves them small, fragile, transparent. But you are still here. The spotlight does not dim. The ground does not shake beneath your feet. Every attempt to erase you has instead engraved you deeper into memory. Every smear has turned into testimony. Every denial has transformed into proof. The very things meant to destroy you have become monuments of your endurance. This is what truth does. It doesn't just survive, it multiplies. It doesn't just whisper, it resounds. Once revealed, it cannot be silenced again. People may try to turn away, but the image remains etched in their minds. They cannot forget what they have seen. And what they have seen is you, unveiled, undeniable, chosen. Understand this. You are not standing here because of their permission. You are not here because they finally recognized you. You are here because you were built for this from the beginning. Every sacrifice, every tear, every lonely night was not wasted. It was construction. It was alignment. It was the silent drawing of a blueprint too vast for them to comprehend. They thought you were broken, but broken things don't rise like this. They thought you were finished, but finished things don't echo. They thought you were erased, but erased things don't become unforgettable. Their lies have collapsed, but your truth has become a structure that towers above them, visible to all. And now the roles are reversed. The ones who once claimed authority over your story are left as footnotes in yours. The ones who mocked are now silent. The ones who tried to bury you now live beneath the weight of their own exposure. So what is the outcome? It is not victory in the shallow sense. It is not revenge, not gloating, not noise. The outcome is presence, your presence, unshaken, undeniable. The outcome has certain clarity. Truth finally standing where lies once lived. The outcome is inevitability, everything aligning exactly as it was always meant to. This is not an ending. Endings belong to stories that fade. What you carry is not fading, it is expanding. What they feared is not silenced, it is alive. The conclusion is simple, yet vast. You were never ordinary. You were always chosen. And now, the world can never forget.